Hey, how are you? Well, today we're going to get started building the bedside table for the storage bed that I made a few weeks ago. And there's a couple alterations on this table because it's a storage bed. And we'll get into that in a minute. But first I wanted to talk to you about what I'm doing now. I put an auction up on eBay once a week. It's generally something I've made here in the shop or up in the art studio. And this week it's one of my paintings in one of the frames that I made down here. And this painting is also going to be this week's painting lesson. That should come out on Sunday. So I don't know if you do the painting lessons. It's fun. If you've never painted before, it's an easy way to get started. So that's what's new. Links will be in the description. Let's bring the camera over, take a closer look at this drawing, and then we can get to work. This is the drawing that I've come up with, and this would be the table for the right side of the bed if you're looking at the headboard. And that's because there's an opening here, and this opening is here to allow you to get into the storage that's built into the bed. The first step is to build 2 plywood boxes. I'm using 3/4 inch birch plywood, and I've already built one of the boxes, and I've cut the material for the next box. You'll need 2 pieces for the sides that measure 3 inches by 15.5 inches, a top and a bottom that measure 17.25 by 15.5. I'll use 1 5/8 screws to screw the box together, and I like to measure in from each end 2 inches, and then at the center, which is 7 3/4, and next I'll drill and countersink holes. I'm using wood glue and screws to build the box, but when I assemble it, I like to tack the sides on with an 18 gauge brad, and that just holds everything in place while I get a chance to screw it together. Now that I've got the 2 drawer boxes built, I'll move on to the side of the cabinet, and I'll need 1 piece of 3/4 inch birch plywood cut to 26 inches by 15.5. Now I'm going to attach the side that I just cut to the drawer boxes. And again, I'm using wood glue, but this time I'll use 1 1/4 screws because I don't want the screw to go through and into the drawer box. The next part I'm going to cut is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood for the center here, in between the 2 drawer boxes. And again, the width is 15.5, and the length looks to be about 17.1/8. My first cut is just a little bit too heavy, so I'll bring the plywood back to the table saw and take off just about a 32nd of an inch. This is one of those measurements where it's better to just sneak up on it. You don't want to cut the piece of plywood too short. Okay, so now I've got a pretty nice snug fit. But before I drop the piece in here, I'm going to want to stand the cabinet up and drill and countersink a few holes so I can attach the piece with screws. All right, well, I'm making a few of the design decisions with this one as I move along through the project. So I turned the camera off yesterday to figure a few things out. Let's take a look at what I did and then we'll get back to work. I'm going to use a cherry veneer on the sides and the tops of the cabinet, so I filled all the holes with joint compound. And the thing with joint compound is you're going to have to apply at least 2 or 3 coats because it shrinks. I applied a coat, sanded it, applied another coat, and in some cases even a 3rd coat. Now I'm also going to trim the front edge of the cabinet using sapele molding, and when I made the molding there was an 1/8 of an inch offcut, and I used that to trim out the back of the cabinet. Now originally I wasn't going to trim the back of the cabinet out because the cabinet is going up against the wall, but I had the molding and it just looks a lot nicer than the plywood end grain. Before I can get started with any of the veneer work, I need to trim out the face frame with the 1/2 inch sapele molding. The first piece I'll apply is the piece to the side of the cabinet, and this is a straight run from the bottom to the top. I'm using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch nails in the nail gun. On the drawer boxes, I'll use butt joints on this side of the cabinet and miter joints out here. I've just finished putting the veneer on the side of the cabinet and on the side of the 2 drawer boxes. And next is the veneer on this bottom shelf area and the top. You can see I've got a little painter's tape here, and that's to keep the contact cement off of the inside of the cabinet. It's been about 15 minutes and the contact cement is dry. I'm going to put a stick along the inside. As long as there's no contact cement on the stick doesn't stick to the contact cement. I've also got a piece of green tape here to remind me that this is the side that goes against the inside of the cabinet. Now I can add the veneer to the top, and again I'm using the sticks to help position the veneer in place. I'm not going to be able to get the router into this tight spot, so I'll trim the veneer first with a pair of scissors, and then I'll use a chisel, a sharp chisel, to clean it up. And then finish it off with a sanding block. Now moving on to the back of the cabinet, and I just applied the iron-on edge banding, and next I'll drill a few pocket holes, and that's how I'm going to attach the back to the cabinet. When I attach the back to the cabinet, I want it set in from the back 1 inch. So I've ripped a piece of scrap wood at 1 inch, and I'll use that as a gauge and trace a line. I'm using a few squeeze clamps to hold the back in place while I attach the back with a few pocket hole screws. Now I should mention, it's really important to make sure that you clean up any of the glue squeeze out while the glue is still wet. I like to use a damp rag, and then in the tight spots I use a damp paintbrush. Well, that's as far as I'm going to get this week. I still need to build the drawers and fit the drawers. And there's a couple other things I need to do, and I really don't want to just rush through it. If you want to build this cabinet, there is a cut list and a drawing on my website. And if this is the first time that you've tuned into my channel, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and check out my eBay auctions and follow me on Facebook and Instagram. And also, if you have any questions on this project, leave them in the comments. I'm going to do a follow-up video on Tuesday, and I'll talk about a mistake I made with this project, which is just a dumb mistake. It's something I can take care of, but it's going to waste a little bit of time, and I made it twice. So I'll talk about that on Tuesday also. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.